Hi, everybody. I am Missi Matthews. Welcome to another virtual Steelers roundtable. I am joined today by Bob Labriola and Mike Prisuta. And on Thursday, the NFL owners meeting virtually once again to talk some business. There were 4 proposals that were approved in their meeting. There was also 2 that were tabled. So a lot to talk about, guys, even some things that were not on the list. But Labs, you did have a chance to talk to team president Art Rooney II following that meeting yesterday. So what was your biggest takeaway from what Art said?
Well, I think that really the news to come out of the day, so to speak, would be not so much what they passed, but what they didn't. The 2 things being the 4th and 15 / onside kick proposal did not get passed. And, thankfully, they stuck the wooden stake through the heart of that replay pass interference disaster from last year. That's now officially dead and gone, hopefully forever. But I think those were the 2 really newsworthy things to me. What Art said about the 4th and 15, which I thought was kind of interesting, was he said that for the Steelers, particularly with himself and Coach Mike Tomlin, it was a little bit too gimmicky. The Steelers are in favor of trying to figure something out to maybe bring back at least the concept of the onside kick, but they didn't like that 4th and 15 thing. And what Art said about the pass interference replay thing was, he said something about, I think everyone understood as soon as the season ended that one was a bad idea.
I mean, that was not even on their agenda. I think just the fact that it wasn't on their agenda, there was nothing to discuss. Prisuta, looking at what was passed, and his lab said what was tabled or not passed and just continued to be discussed. What did you take away from this virtual meeting?
Well, first, let me just say that I'm glad this is not an agree to disagree, because while there's a winner and a loser in that, and I'm used to winning agree to disagree, kind of like the way Alabama wins football games, I lose miserably the background competition here. Look at Labriola in front of that majestic metallurgy decorating his home. I am in awe of the metal golden triangle. So salute, Don Corleone. What I took away from the meeting, I think the league is decided, and justifiably so, to tread very carefully and very lightly. And I want to take you back to an interview that Troy Vincent did recently with NBC Sports. If people tuning in don't know who he is the NFL Executive Vice President of Football Operations, and he was talking about that pass interference debacle that Lab said the stake has been driven through, and thanks for that as well. But he talked about that in terms of the NFL moving too quickly and maybe too much of a knee-jerk reaction to the Saints-Rams thing. Said Vincent, quote, "We failed. I'm first in line. We cannot allow that to happen again. We've got to do our due diligence. You can't rush and just shove something in there without knowing all the consequences." And we found that out last year, live and in action publicly. And I think he's not the only guy in retrospect that feels that way. There are a lot of things to discuss. Stuff that has been tabled doesn't necessarily mean it's dead and buried. It means it's been tabled, and they'll maybe revisit and maybe see if there's a better way. I was a little disappointed, to be honest with you, about the 4th and 15 thing. I think they got to do something to juice up the onside kick. 10.4% success rate the last couple of seasons since they changed the rules in deference to player safety. That's down from a 21.2% success rate between 1992 and 1917. I would like to see them put a little more uncertainty into the end of a game. If you're down 8 or 9, are you going to score and have at least a reasonable chance to get the ball back? But as it was explained to me this morning by a couple of people, the answer to that is don't be down by 9 or 10 points with less than 2 minutes remaining, and you got nothing to worry about.
But that is something I think they are going to continue to look at. When you hear from Troy Vincent and different people from the league office that spoke, even Rich McKay, part of the competition committee yesterday. And Labs, when you talked to Art, it also sounded like, according to your article, that the Steelers, while they were against what the actual proposal was this time, they are open to more conversation on it.
Yeah, because, as Art said, you do want, and Mike said just now too, you do want to have some mechanism available for a team that is trying to catch up at the end of a game, to have a legitimate chance of executing a play. I mean, what the onside kick is now, it's just blind luck. I mean, there's no technique. It used to be, there was a little bit of strategy involved, and a technique of how to kick the ball, and what you wanted different guys to do, and certain guys went for the ball, other guys would block the receiving team out of the way. Now it's just happenstance. I mean, it was almost like rolling the dice or flipping a coin. And so you don't want it to be like that, because
it's like rolling loaded dice.
Yeah, in a lot of ways it is. But you don't want to remove the excitement or the potential excitement that you would have in a comeback situation like that. But again, you want to try to make it a football play that is executed well, then it works. And if it's not, then it doesn't, as opposed to, just some gimmick. Because here's another thing with 4th and 15, and I beat this drum all the time, my favorite subject, the officials. Some off the play illegal contact, automatic first down. Some zebra feels he needs to make a statement and let himself be seen at a critical time of the game, make some chicken bleep call that, you can't have that kind of stuff. And so that's why I think that, the 4th and 15, it sounded good, but once you delve into it a little bit and look beyond just the very surface of, what they were, the play, there are just too many potential pitfalls. Like Troy Vincent said, you need to do more due diligence and look deeper into this so that you can think past, the Bill Belichick's and the Mike Vrabels. How are we going to beat this rule, as opposed to, how are we going to execute this play to help our team win?
All right, I do want to quickly go over the 4 proposals that did pass. And Labs, when you talked to Art, he said the Steelers did vote in favor of the 4 that passed. They needed 24 votes out of the 32 owners to get them to pass. So very quickly, you mentioned a few of them: making permanent the expansion of automatic replay reviews to include scoring plays and turnovers negated by a foul, any successful or unsuccessful try attempt. The defensive list, player protection, expanding it to kickoff or a punt returner who's in possession of the ball. And then the competition committee also proposing preventing teams from manipulating the game clock. I knew Labs would get that one in somewhere, Prisuta, due to Bill Belichick and Mike Vrabel using that. Vrabel against Belichick, actually. And then one of the other bylaws, and this is something the Steelers have utilized in recent past, increasing the number of players that can be designated to return from 2 to 3. So that's just an additional player that if they feel like he needs a little bit more time off to hopefully get back. So those are the 4 proposals that did pass. So Labs, anything else that from talking to Art yesterday that you want to bring up about those 4 things?
No, not really. I thought really that the 4 that did pass were pretty much all no-brainers. How the punt returner has not been protected, like wide receivers to this point, it really is beyond me. Kickoff returns, just based on how they're executed, the guy catching the kickoff is usually not in that kind of imminent danger. The 2 to 3 on the addition of the designated to return on the IR, again, I think that just helps the product. It helps the game for teams to have their players available to them, and more of them available to them, if it's reasonable. The replay thing, of course, you want to, if you're going to have replay, you might as well try to make it as apt to get you to the right conclusion as not. And so, including a scoring play or a turnover that was negated, to me is you want to look at that as just as much as you would want to look at a scoring play that was successful or a turnover, that was ruled a catch or whatever. So to me, I just thought those were necessary, but really not that earth-shattering.
Now, Prisuta, sky judge is kind of this broad term that everybody throws around, and I think a lot of people think, it's an extra camera up top above the field, but it's also talking about having an extra official who's in the press box, the replay guy, who could then communicate with guys down on the field. And I know nothing was necessarily passed in terms of that, and it's something that coaches really like. I saw that, Labs. I can see both of you right now.
I know, but I mean, the NFL doesn't have enough competent officials for the guys that they want on the field. Where are they going to find 16 more? I mean, who are they going to be? And what are they going to, what impact are they going to want to have? Does a guy who is a sky judge think that, if I don't make a call here, they may eliminate my job, so I better do something. Hit the buzzer. That's whatever. So I just don't, until they really kind of, again, going back to Troy Vincent, I hate giving Mike Prisuta this much credit, but what the quote that he brought out to me really strikes at the heart of a lot of these matters. You need to dive deeper into these things. On the surface, yeah, the sky judge sounds like, well, this is a great thing. This will fix when the right tackle for San Diego, or the Chargers, a couple of years ago was obviously false starting. Nobody saw it, and they threw a touchdown pass. Well, the sky judge will see that. Okay, that's one, on the good side. But what other involvement might this guy either have or think he needs to have that could be a detriment to the flow of the game, the enjoyment of the game, the outcome of the game? And until you have all the answers, instead of just maybe one, I think, discretion is the better part of valor.
Yeah, I think there's a place for it eventually, but I think you have to limit it. I'm going back and forth on replay in recent times. I don't want to see obvious stuff missed, but I don't want replay to destroy the game either. Maybe the way to go is to use the sky judge for the I'll use the term obvious stuff that maybe the guys on the field didn't catch or got blocked out on. Did the guy step out of bounds? Was the ball touched by one player before it wound up in possession of another? Was the plane of the goal line crossed? Did they mark off 5 yards when they should have marked off 10 or vice versa? Were there 12 guys on the field? Stuff like that. I think maybe you look at the above view and say, yeah, we got that. The judgment calls, I think, still have to be judgment calls. You're not going to be able to legislate whether it was roughing the passer or not from further away. To Lab's point about the 4th and 15 concerns on the alternate onside kick, if you're worried about a guy making a dumb call at the wrong time, maybe the answer is get better guys making the calls and not more cameras correcting the bad calls that are made.
I hate to say this, but you're right on that one. But
this is not agree to disagree, but
that'll never happen.
Take that. All right, something else happening yesterday following the virtual owners meetings. The NFL commissioner, Roger Goodell, said that the NFL is going to try. Competitive fairness will be at stake here, if possible, to start moving in coaching staffs and allowing them back into the practice facilities as early as next week, as long as all 32 teams can do that. And also announcing they're going to be extending this virtual offseason for another 2 weeks. Possibly that could mean the return of a few players. Who knows in terms of that, but that's something else that I think we'll have to keep an eye on as the league is slowly but surely trying to get more and more people back into their facilities and moving the season along as we get, it's the end of May, it's almost June. It doesn't feel right because we're not watching football in shorts, as you guys like to call it, with OTAs and then minicamp coming up, but training camp is right around the corner.
Yeah,
well, I never thought I'd miss OTAs, but I do. I would love to be on that sideline watching even a special teams drill, Labs, talking to some guy who I know has no chance to make the team. Take me back, sooner the better.
Yeah, and the thing that again, as the news crept out yesterday, initially it sounded as if that there might be some sort of mini camps or something like that. But the extension of the virtual off season simply means still no players at the facility. To me, I don't know. Maybe that changes. Maybe I'm misreading it. But and so really until players and coaches are somehow, in the same area, the same zip code, I think it really doesn't matter that much if the coaches are in the facility or not, if they can't be with the players. But again, it does sound like we're moving in the right direction. And so, I don't want to discount this, anything. Progress in this situation that we're in, even baby steps, to me, is something to be celebrated.
All right. Well, thanks for joining me on this Friday, guys. I really appreciate it. That's going to do it for this edition of our Steelers Roundtable. We'll see everyone next week.